welcome to TEMO. We have our third lecture today and our second talk show. So we start where we left it last time. We have been looking at the business model canvas, and we have been looking at the different components of it, and today we would look at how to actually develop and execute it, so how to work with the strategy behind the business model canvas, or after we have designed the business model canvas. So the agenda for today is similar to last week. We have an introduction or an introductory lecture of 45 minutes. Then we have a break. Then we have the talk show with two guys from Implement who are coming to talk about how they work with business model canvas in their consulting job, so how they work with other companies to improve their business models. And finally, we'll have another break and a wrap-up where we will connect the curriculum with the talk show. So the last thing that we did last time was to look at some of these curious products from Shark Tank. And we left you with a question: what do these products have in common? And I would just like to give you 2 minutes to talk with the person next to you and hopefully reflect on what you did at home looking at these products. And then we can talk about why were these products successful. So 2 minutes. Yes? So, I have taken out a selection. It's not that I haven't done a specific selection of products, but just I took out some of the products that were in the list. So, I could see a lot of you were talking. So, what did they have in common? Do you have any idea of why they were successful or why they are successful? It's a quite recent list. I could see you guys were talking, so you get the mic. No? Come on. Did you look at the lists? Or should I go through some of the products? Should I go to some of the products? Okay, so we have the Squatty Potty. We talked about it last week. And then we had, or on this slide, I put up a CD Kitty, which is a tool that you can use to train your cat to not use the sandbox anymore, or yeah, the sand thing, but to use the toilet. Then we have a wage, so that you can change your baby and at the same time monitor how much weight is gaining and how well he's doing. We have an unshrinking solution for your clothes. So if you wash your sweater too warm, then you can take them back to their previous state. We have a iPhone or a phone cleaner so that you can put the telephone in it and disinfect it, since we usually have very, very dirty phones, apparently. And then I took out this lock for the bike, because I think it's very relevant in Copenhagen. It's extremely expensive, actually, compared to the locks you can find here. But it's stuck to your bike, and if someone opens it, actually you get a text on your phone, and so you're always aware of what's going on with your bike. And then there were other products. There were some bowls that you can put in your drying machine, and there were a variety of things. And some of them included technologies behind it. Some of them were just similar to the Squatty Potty, just something with a good idea behind. So why are they successful? Do you think this is like super great product that will change the way we live? Yes, we have a hand here.
I mean, maybe it's a little subjective, but I think that all of these products solve non-existing problems. I mean, problems that are maybe created, so they are maybe all reinventing like in a new sort of market.
Mm-hmm. So why do you say it's non-existing problems?
I've never had any of these problems. I mean, I will not need to clean my phone, or nor do I want to unshrink my clothes.
Yeah. So. Yes. So what they did was basically work with the value proposition in that sense, right? So instead of looking into pains that were obvious for all of us, they looked into pains that were specific to a certain type of people. So if you think about the City Kitty, the thing where you can train your cat to use the toilet, where would you place the value? How would you describe the value proposition? Now you're talking about non-existing product or non-existing pains, but I mean, if someone is buying it, someone is experiencing the pain. So could you try and describe the value proposition of that product?
Products, they will go and solve some, I say non-existing, but maybe very small problems in where customer carry out their jobs. Yeah. So it will help a little. It's a very little margin on solving some of the security problems with bikes, or some of the few clothing problems that you might have. Or if you like dry clean some wool, you might unshrink it after, but you could also just not be a fool and don't dry clean wool. So I mean, it's, yeah. I mean, maybe it's a lot of niche products. So if the same company sold all these products under like startup brands, then maybe it's a good business model. But I would not be like owner of just one of these brands.
Okay. Kasper, do you have something?
Could you turn up the mic? Okay, they don't hear anything. Okay, I think this is getting better. Okay, I think the wool thing is actually quite an interesting product, in the sense that if I were to wash any of my wife's clothes and shrink it, she would be infuriated. And I would probably only do it because I rarely touch the washing machine, which would again promote some sort of not very kind reaction. So that means there might be actually a very high margin to this product, because when she gets back, I might be able to buy this product at a huge margin and return that clothes which I destroyed into their normal state, and hopefully just slip it into the closet. So it does solve a problem, and it does solve an interesting, but it's a niche product, and I think it's quite fun in that sense.
So when you work with this type of tools, and you're working with products that don't have an apparent value proposition, where you can actually see, okay, this solves a huge pain, then what you do is you try to map what are the pain, the gains, and the customer jobs that we are trying to address, and how are we doing it with our product. And then the next step is to connect that with your business model canvas. And I have thought of a small exercise or a few questions for you. We have talked about the Squatty Potty quite a bit last time, so we would like to try and have you map the business model canvas. And I know it's not a very exciting product, but the business model canvas is something that you will have to work with in your report, so it's important that you understand what are the different elements of the canvas and how to map them. So we just thought we'd try this small exercise. And you still have the mic. If you think about the Squatty Potty, what would you define as the value proposition of that product? What would you put in the business model canvas?
Go on the toilet. I guess some people have stomach problems, or maybe some people their physique is not meant for the standard size toilets, I guess. So it can solve that problem.
Yes. Okay. How do I write this down? I haven't thought about this when I planned the exercise, actually. Yeah. So different toilet use, I guess. We could write it like this. So you actually also mentioned, yes, we have.
I was going to actually, I was just going to say it could also be toilet encouragement, like maybe for parents who have kids who are having trouble using the toilet, that they could buy this product and show them the advertisement that might help to encourage their children or
yes,
maybe relatives to use the toilet. And
yeah,
that could be another value proposition.
Yeah, super. Do we have something else?
Yes, we were talking about that this product is kind of saying you that it's health, something that helps your health. Yeah. Even as he said that it's not a problem that you have, it's a problem that it does not exist, but it's a very simple thing. It's something that you already done every day.
Yes.
And just moving your legs a little bit will help. Why not try? And it's kind of cheap and easy to do. It's not more effort, so it's health.
Yeah. So if you just a second, if you build on that, then what would the customers be? If that is your value proposition, then which people are you addressing?
Yes, I think in general now is like people it can be all people, but in general the ones that are encouraged of the house, probably not students because we are not going to pay about for that, but the ones that have already like a complete job and life and things, they can say, okay, it's a little cost and it can benefit in some way, so okay. And there are many people worry now about health in general.
So like families and health aware people? Yes? Someone else? Other customer segments that we could have?
Could even just be people who have an inclined sense of curiosity, really.
Yes. This is actually something that you see in a lot of niche products. Last time we looked at the long tail business models or business model patterns where you sell a few products to a lot of people and then you sell many products to very little people. And that's something that targets that part or those niche markets. So basically we have different types of customers. We have our value proposition. What is the customer relationships that the Squatty Potty guys have? Any suggestion? We saw a very good example last week in the video.
You could say that the YouTube video is the main source of customer relation, so it's trying to connect with the humor and visual content.
Yeah, so they're trying to build some sort of friendly relationship, right? Yeah. And then the video is one of their channels. It's one of the ways that they build up the connection. And if we move into the other side of the business model canvas, if we move into the backstage part, what is their key resource or their key activities? It's a piece of plastic. So what would be their key activity? Marketing. Yes? Well, marketing is certainly very important. Why is that? Can you get the mic? Just mic? Because we are streaming as well as last week, so the mic is important.
Well, because I think without good marketing, I mean, no one is going to buy this quite not necessarily thing. It's not the thing you like think, okay, I really need this stuff. I am going to Google whether it exists or not.
Yeah, exactly. So marketing is actually one of the key activities in this. And what else? What do they need to produce the Squatty Potty?
Well, the fabric or building the product as in fact.
Yes. And this is actually something that manufacturing, yes. This is something that is very important for you to remember, that you need to consider what the product is and what you need to produce it. We had a report last semester that was talking about, I don't know if I mentioned it last week, but they were, the challenge was about the world leader manufacturer of pump, and manufacturing was not among their key activities. So even though for the Squatty Potty, marketing is certainly the biggest or the most important activity, but without the manufacturing, you can't actually produce the product. So always try to think about all the different activities that a company needs to work with to produce their product and put it into the market. So we already heard about the resources because we had the materials that they need. And something else that is connected to the marketing, what would the key resource be?
Well, they need to produce the video for YouTube.
Yeah.
That might be a resource as well.
Yes, so who produces the video?
Most probably some actors or something, or some external company.
Yeah, so if they have an external company that is producing the video, then we will have a key partner as well. But because it's really important, if the video is bad, if it doesn't have a nice script, or if it's not attractive enough, then our marketing strategy would actually suffer from that. And then we have HR here as key resources because you need someone that designs the marketing. So if we look into the costs, we have marketing, we have manufacturing, so that's all things that go into the costs, right? So actually the marketing would be mostly HR, and then the market research and so on. And then we have the production costs. Something else that they need to have?
The distribution.
Yes, the distribution. And this could also be related to their key partners because they might create some special relationship with certain shops so that they are sure that they get a nicer spot on the shelves or that they advertise their product more. What about the revenues? What is the revenue here?
The sale of the Squatty Potty.
Yes, so the sales from the product. Yes, so you can see, although this is not the super technological product, but it actually has a well-thought business model behind it because all the different pieces connect to each other. And the next step, what we will look into today is how do you go from this into a strategy, and then the next step again, next time would be how do you go from the strategy into an organization that works, and how do you actually make an organization successful by working on the different elements of the organization. So when we look into the business models do not exist in a vacuum. So, of course, we have the Squatty Potty, who, as an example, and they entered a niche market with a product that was quite new and didn't really have a lot of competition at the time. And this is the characteristic, one of the characteristics of many of these Shark Tank products, that they go into markets that are completely unexplored yet, and they offer themselves to very specific customers. But when we work with bigger organizations, and we work with new or existing business models, we also need to consider the external environment. So we need to see where is the business model located, how is it positioned as compared to the competitors, to the customers, and so on. And there are 4 different forces that we can look at when we look at the external environment and when we look at how the business model is positioned. And the first one is actually market analysis. With the market analysis, you actually study if a market is attractive and how does it behave over time. So basically, you ask questions such as, where is the market heading? Is it growing? Is it going in a particular position? In a particular direction? If you think about the Danske Bank case with the mobile life, what they saw was that the market could be moving towards a digitalization, and so they entered that world by creating something such as the mobile pay. And then they tried to, when they saw, okay, this is working, the market is actually heading towards this digitalization. So we need to work more towards embracing this change. Then they tried to develop other apps, among which the Sunday and all the mobile life universe. Then you ask yourself questions such as, what are the most important customer segments? So in the case of the mobile pay, they would look at who are the customers that would need to use this app the most. And then you try to see, okay, what are the characteristics? Then you look at the needs and the demands. So are the market needs actually being served? So we talked before about the pains of different products. And although the products from Shark Tank do not target very crucial problems that everybody has, but they do target specific needs for specific customer segments that are in that moment unfulfilled. So if Casper shrinks his wife's clothes, it has happened to me many times with my husband, then what does he do? He buys the Unshrink It formula. It's a very small target, but it's an unfulfilled need, and someone is filling it up with that product. Remember that also not all gaps are there to be filled in. Sometimes there is a gap and there is a reason for that, and that's why you need a market research. Maybe the specific product that you have in mind would go and satisfy a need that is not satisfied yet, but there might be a reason why that doesn't happen. And an example for that is actually the Sunday app that Danske Bank was developing. Because they are satisfying a need that it's in the market and that nobody is satisfying yet. But is there really a need for it, or is it really the right moment for it? Not yet. Another thing that you consider when you look at your market is what are the switching costs? We talked during the first lecture about Apple and the fact that you need to, when you want to switch from an Apple to another hardware or another software, then you don't only have the switching costs of buying a new product, but you also have the cost of learning how to use it. So how loyal are the customers to a particular product? If we want to enter with a new business model, with a new product, how easy is it to attract new customers? And finally, you look at the revenue attractiveness. We talked before about margins. Are the margins high or low? How much money can we make out of this product? How much do we need to sell to reach the break-even point and actually start making money out of it? The break-even point is the point where your revenues are the same as your costs. So it's the point where you're starting making money. And sometimes you find it as BEP. So if sometimes we talked about that, that's what break-even point is. So the next external force is the competitive analysis. Once you've understood the market, you've understood your customers and the market needs and the switching costs and the potential revenues, then you look at the different actors that are in the market. And you do that by using a model that's called Port 5 Forces, where you actually analyze 5 different forces that operate in a market. And the first is actually the competitors. So you look at who else is producing this product, who are they offering to, what are the characteristics, and how is our product different from theirs. Then you look at the new entrants. So you look at the potential for new companies to come into the market and be a competitor for you. So this is actually what, if you think about the Danske Bank, is what they did with the mobile pay. They became a new entrant with an app in a market where there were no apps. So they actually started competing with other banks with something that the other banks weren't offering. You also look for substitute products and services. So you look at what is the threat that something that is not similar to our product, but that serves the same purpose, enters the market and steals the customers from us. And an example of that is the war, so to say, between the trains and the low-cost carriers, who are offering two different products, but the service is the same, it's transportation, and so they have to fight against each other to actually win over the customers and have them buy the tickets. You also look at the suppliers and the other value chain actors. When you are tied to one specific supplier, you can have problems because they can actually influence the way, or they can influence your cost because they can influence the price of the products that you buy from them. If you think about the case of the Squatty Potty, if you only have one company producing it, they would probably over time increase the price over and over again so that you increasingly have to pay more for your first product, and then your margins will become lower. A way to solve this, I mean, in the case of the Squatty Potty, it's not a very big problem because you don't need a very difficult technology to produce it. But if you think about the example we did last week with the valves, with the valves that can be produced without the angles, then in that case, it might be very difficult to find a supplier that can give you exactly what you need. And this is something that Apple does very well. Instead of having only one supplier for each of their pieces, they have different suppliers so that they can actually control the cost and they can actually control the relationship they have with their different partners. Finally, you look at the other stakeholders. So you look at your customers, you look at all the different actors that can have an interest in your, that can have an interest or an effect on your product. And just to give you a very small example of this, my family has owned an ice cream shop in Hamburg for many years, and at a certain point they had to close it because the customer wouldn't want to pay 10 cents more per scoop of ice cream. So basically, the market was changing. They had to pay more for the ingredients. They had to pay more for producing the ice cream, for paying the rent, and so on. But the customer weren't willing to pay more for the product. So they ended up having to close down because they weren't able to maintain a margin high enough for them to cover the costs. So it's not only your competitors, your suppliers, and your substitute products and new entrants that you have to consider, but you also need to look at the customers and how are they behaving over time, or how will behave over time. Another force that we look at is the key trends. So you look at what is going to happen in the future. And to do this, you look at different elements. You look at the technology. How is the technology, where is the technology heading? You look at the regulatory forces. So you look at what is the country where we are located, how are they behaving, or how are they changing their rules, and how can this affect us? You look at the society and the culture. How are they changing over time? If people are increasingly using apps and smartphones and so on, then this might be, the digitalization might be a trend that you need to take into consideration. And a lot of companies are actually doing that. And also you look at the socioeconomic trends. So you look at what's happening at the demographic level. Are we having a baby boom? Are there a lot of small children that we need to take into consideration in the market? Or are there a lot of old people, for example?
Just one second.
Yes?
This very quickly becomes concrete. For instance, regulatory trends. We have Brexit. We have a new president in the US that changes the rules of the game. So if you are, for instance, exporting to England, then in a few years, things are going to change a lot. You have to negotiate deals. You have to negotiate customs. So the regulatory trends can quickly become a squeeze and something that you have to consider very closely.
Yes. And the next force is macroeconomics, where you're actually looking at what's going on in the macroeconomic of the environment where you're located. So you look at the global market conditions, you look at the financial markets, you look at commodities, so how easy is it to get the essential resources that you need, such as, for example, electricity. And then you look at the economic infrastructure. And this is particularly important if you're working with developing versus developed countries, because there the economic infrastructure is actually something that can influence the way you build up your business. And an example of this is IKEA. IKEA has shops and business all over the world, and every time they enter a new market, or every time they enter a new country or a new location, they need to take all of these different forces into consideration. And they need to look into the markets, the key trends, the macroeconomics, and so on. And this is important not only for the backstage part of their business model, it's important for the front part, for the relationship with the customers, because of course the customers will be different. Although with the globalization, they might have a lot of similar traits. But in every single country, you have characteristics that affect both your customers and also the people you're working with. And this is therefore also important when you organize for your business model. So one model that we use in TEMO to look at what are the characteristics is the Hofstede national or model of national culture, where basically there are 5 characteristics on a continuum, and depending on whether you're high or low on these characteristics, you can classify different countries. And characteristics are, for example, the difference between achievement and nurturing. So this used to be masculine, feminine. So are you more, is it a very ambitious country, like the United States, for example, or is it a country that takes very good care of its citizens, as you have in the Scandinavian countries? Then you have low and high uncertainty avoidance. So is it a country where people take a lot of risk, or where they don't want to take risk? Is it a country where people are very individualistic, or they're thinking a lot about the collectivity? If you think about the difference between the United States and Japan, here you have a big gap on these characteristics. Then you have low power distance and high power distance. This I saw very well when I came to Denmark, used to being grown up in Italy and studying in Italy and having a very big power distance to my teachers in university and having to address them like, dear, majestic, superior professor. And here I had to say, dear Casper. So it was a very different relationship between high and low power, so to say. And then you have short-term orientation versus long-term orientation. Is this a country where people think about today and would rather take a lot of debt to buy more products? Or is this a country where people think about the future and want to save as much money as possible and, for example, would rather invest in houses and apartments rather than investing in goods that they will have to buy many times over the years? So, just a small example, if this is a comparison between Sweden, Denmark, and Germany, and you can see that, for instance, if we look at the power distance, in Denmark you have a very little power distance, where in Germany the power distance is higher. It's both countries where individualism is quite high, but then you see the difference in the achievement, because Denmark and Sweden are quite nurturing countries, whereas Germany is more focused on the achievement part. So now we have looked at the business model canvas and the environment in which it is located. And the environment changes a lot all the time. So the reason why it is so important to analyze the external forces is that you need to monitor what's going on outside of your business model and how can it influence your business model over time and your organization. And when you notice that there is something that might have an impact on your organization or your business model, then you start assessing the need for change. So you see, okay, we have an increased interest in technology and people are using more and more digitalized products. Do we need to do something about it? If you think about Danske Bank before they started working with the mobile pay. So you assess the need for change and then you decide, yes, we need to do it there is something going on in the market that we need to follow up on. So we want to become more digitalized, and we want to do it with the mobile pay app. Then you implement the change, so you actually develop the app and organize for it and launch it into the market. And once it's done, you evaluate the change and say, yes, the mobile pay app was actually very successful. We can replicate some of that into some new products. So what is important here is that you need to consider that this is a model that you will use a lot when you're looking outside of your organization and see, okay, is something changing? Do I need to do something about it? And then you will go through these 4 steps. And basically the way it works is that you have your business model with its external forces at a specific point in time, and then over time the forces will change and your business model will evolve. And over time you will have different options and different directions that you can follow to adapt your business model. And you need to decide which one is the best. And sometimes you will take great decisions, like the mobile pay decision, although they're not making money with it yet, so we will see how that will develop over time. And sometimes you take decisions that are not that successful, like with the Sunday, where they're not making money and we're still not sure whether they will be able to. So there are 4 objectives and 4 motivations that you can look at when you're deciding if you develop or change your business model. And we have mentioned this before. You can satisfy existing but unanswered market needs. You can bring new technology into the market. You can improve, disrupt, or transform something. Or you can create a completely new market like they did with the Squatty Potty. And then you have 4 motivations that go from being very reactive to what's going on in the market. So there is a new president in the United States, we need to do something about it, and you react to that, to being very proactive and saying, we don't care about what's going on outside, we have an idea of what might happen in the future, but we want to address a need that is unanswered and we don't care about anything else. And then you launch something like the Squatty Potty, or back in the days, you launched the iPod and iTunes in a market that is completely unexisting at the moment. So these 4 motivations are a continuum. It's not like it's either one or the other, but you can go from one to the next depending on what's the situation you are dealing with and what's the product that you are putting into the market. To decide on how to do this, the first step, or when you have to decide on which changes to make, the first step is to make a SWOT analysis. And we mentioned this on the first day. The SWOT is actually very important to determine where does my organization stand, or does my business model stand, and how can I design a strategy for the product. And you do this by looking at 2 things. What are the things that are helpful or harmful to my organization? What's going good and what's going bad? And here, so you have it in this side, and then you have on the Y, you have what's going on internal or external to my organization. And then you map it. So the strengths are things that are good for your organization, is something that you're doing right, and it's something that is related to the internal part of your organization, and especially to the present. So what are we doing today that is going well, that is a strength for us? Then you have the weaknesses, which is the opposite, but is still internal. So what are we not doing well? What should we improve? And once you have mapped that, you move into the external environment and see, okay, what are the opportunities in the market? What are the things that could change in the environment we are in that we could take advantage of? And finally, you look at the threats. So what can happen? Which potential entrants could there be that might disrupt the market? Which potential substitute product could be a threat to us in the future? What is important when you look at the SWOT is that you consider the internal versus external part. It's quite easy to distinguish between what's good and what's bad for your organization, but you need to be careful when you're working in the difference between internal and external. And one thing to do this is that you think, okay, what's going on well for us today? What is it that we are doing today that is good or bad? And then when you're looking at the external part, you see what could happen in the future. And because you're dealing with the future, then it's usually the external environment you're looking at. Is there a question? Yes? Can we have the mic? Just a second. I have a question there.
What? Oh. Is it working? Yeah.
Yeah.
What if there is an opportunity that is in the future, but within the company or the organization?
Do you have an idea, an example for that?
I don't know, say create a new sharing collaboration platform within the company that might help to address a certain issue, foster innovation within the organization, but it's something forward-looking, so not present.
Yeah, but that's still an opportunity, right? Because it relates to something that's going on outside. It relates to your market, or it relates to, even if you're working with something within your organization, right? If it's something that can give you benefits in the future, it's still because it's related to something outside. It could be because it could target a customer segment that you haven't targeted before, or it could be because it will allow you to deal with your competitors in a better way, or to have a better relationship with your suppliers and so on. So usually when you have this type of opportunities that are internal, they are still somehow reflected in the external environment, because they will help you solve something that can happen in the future in the external environment. Did this answer? Yeah? Do we have?
No, I wanted just to ask if, in the case of a graduate program, was a similar case to what you were saying. Like
Okay, can you get the mic? Because I can't even hear what you're saying. Thank you.
okay. No, I was just wondering if in a case of a company, like planning to have a graduate program was the same case, like to plan to have an internal opportunity for the future.
Yeah, if the...
Could you repeat that? Plan for an internal event? I was just...
For a graduate program, so like to start training people, new graduate
a
students.
graduate program to develop new employees. I mean, the opportunity would be that we create people that deliver special services to our clients, and they do it quicker because they have been trained in our company. And the opportunity for us would be that it's a cheaper way to develop new employees. So there is a connection between the enabler, which is a graduate program, and then it's coupled to a strength, which means, which could be that we are very good at training people, and that translates into an opportunity in the market.
Okay, so they are actually linked.
They are linked.
They are linked to each other, and I think the question that you need to ask yourself there is this something that is present, that is happening today, or is it something that will happen in the future? So once you have decided that there is a need for change, and you have decided we're going to change something, then you need to implement. And we have seen this before, and you will see this many times in TEMO, because it's something that is very important to us. Whenever you implement a change, you need to consider how it's going to affect the different parts in your organization. So you need to have a balance between the need to improve your existing operations and the need to respond to external events. So you always need to balance the internal and the external environment. So you need to consider how we're doing now, how is the environment doing, and how can we act upon it. So there are 3 steps that you can use to plan your strategy. You start by determining the organization goals and missions. So deciding, okay, what is our business and what are our goals? Then you formulate the strategy, so you analyze the current situation and you develop the strategy itself. So basically, in the first step, you define the business model and establish where do you want to go with the business model. In the second step, you say, okay, what is the situation, what is the external environment around the business model, and how can we deal with it? And then finally, you implement it by allocating the resources and responsibilities. And the difference between the business model and the strategy is that the business model is a framework that you use to make money, so to decide how are we going to make money, while the strategy is a framework for desired performance. So what do we want to achieve and how do we want to achieve it? So in the strategy, you actually put your business model inside the context of the external environment and on the timeline, and decide how we're going to act upon this over time. So to formulate the strategy, you start by doing a SWOT analysis, and then you prepare strategies at the strategic, at the tactical, and the operational level. And this means that you go from deciding how to manage the growth and development of the organization as a whole, to deciding how to take advantage of opportunities, down to how do we improve the abilities of each team that we have within our organization. So you connect the SWOT with the three organizational layer that we saw the first time, the strategic, the tactical, and the operational. Then you formulate the strategy, and one way to do this, for example, is to connect your competitive analysis with the market and decide, okay, do we want to be a low cost or do we want to differentiate our product? And then you have different options here. And if you remember, Casper talked about this extensively in the first class. So what we wanted to do here was to show you the link between the different models, for example. It's something that you can do in your report. Once you have assessed the need for change and you have planned your strategy, or you have decided that you need to develop a strategy, then you do a SWOT, and then you can apply this model, for example, to decide which strategy to choose. So, to conclude, when you want to plan for your organization, what you do is first you define the business and establish the goals by doing the business model canvas and deciding where we're heading with this. Then you analyze the situation and develop a strategy based on the context, and then you implement it. And to implement it, you need to allocate the right resources across your organization and make sure the strategy, structure, processes, rewards, and people are aligned. And this is something that we will cover next time. So, last time we had a question, why are we only working with stuff that are related to the external environment or to our customers? From next lecture on, we will go into the internal organization. So this was it for today, for this introductory lecture. We have one question and then we'll go on a break. Can we have the mic, please, to the front? Oops.
Is regarding to your slides where you show that there is a timeline,
yeah,
a time series. This is very interesting. Is it short-term term or long-term? I mean, as you describe, the market is responsive. That means anything can change per hours, maybe minutes. And you are going to fit all these demanding changes into the model to decide tactical and strategical to move forward and improve your product so you can balance between the needs and the performance. This is not predictable model, is it?
No, it's not predictable. It's based on the analysis that you can do at a certain point in time. And then depending on the market you're working with, the term will be longer or shorter. And then depending also on the type of strategy, you can have a long-term strategy for a problem that you need to solve in the short term, that you need to solve right now, and you can have long-term strategies that you need to adapt over time, looking at how is the market responding to what we're doing.
For just being testing myself that I understand, take an example, a car production. Mostly car production is long-term, that they know exactly what the next model is going to be. But the demanding market say, there must be electronic devices that maybe change, and they cannot, for example, in long term predict it, what is demanding on electronic parts of the car is. So it is something long term and short term combination to response to the market.
Yes. So usually you have a long-term strategy, and then you have minor short-term adjustments if something like that happens in a market like the car market. But if you think about the app market, it's a very short term, and that's why in the app market they work a lot with agile models of innovation, where they're innovating at a very fast pace so that they can keep up with the market and within half a day they can actually solve a problem that is arose.
That is why I say to balance it between the short-term variations and the internal organization. So you need different organizations type. I mean, this is very dynamic when we talk about faster and shorter variations.
Yes.
All right.
Okay. One more question.
Sorry.
Okay, I have a question about slide 16. And I understood that we based our market on the model of national culture. 16?
Oh, sorry, this one.
Okay. Yeah, but I was wondering if, for example, could the market influence this model of national culture, and why and how much?
Yeah, so basically the model doesn't influence the market, but it tells you which kind of market are you dealing with. So if, for example, we're talking about IKEA, and IKEA wants to, when they started, IKEA started in Sweden, and then they had to come to Denmark. And when they came to Denmark, they had a lot of problems because the people didn't like the colors and so on. But they were dealing with a very similar culture. So if you would have applied the model, then they would have said, okay, where does Sweden stand in comparison to us? And how is that going to influence our customer? The Danish or the Scandinavian mentality is based on being very simple, and things are not really rich, and so it's okay to have the type of furniture that IKEA sells. When IKEA entered the United States, for instance, they had to deal with a completely different market that weren't used to this sleekness, so they had to sell also the Scandinavian design idea. So you have to see, okay, is this similar or is it different? Do we need the same marketing campaign, for example, if we are entering Denmark or the United States as a Swedish company?
Okay, so the market is not able to influence the national culture?
No.
No, it's impossible.
It's the national culture that influences the market.
Okay, we can have the reverse.
And it's also, the national culture influences also the people that work for you. So if you take the IKEA case, when IKEA went to the United States, they had a bit of a shock when they were trying to train the employees because they weren't used to have the relaxed, non-hierarchic relationship with the bosses. So suddenly it was very weird that the boss would come to the office in a very relaxed clothing and not wearing a tie and talking to them in a very informal way because it was Swedish bosses that were sent around the world. And the Americans were really having difficulties relating to that. So they had to train their employees as well into the IKEA culture, which was a bit of the Swedish culture as well. So this is not only important for your market, but it's also important for the country where you're working.
And is this something related to the problem of the globalization?
Yes. So with globalization, we are much more connected and we have the possibility to interact with a lot of with more countries than we did before the globalization, but this introduces a lot of problems as well, because you have similar customers for certain things, or customers that are similar for certain aspects and they're very different for other aspects. And it's the same for the people that you will work with as your employees or as your partners.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have 10 minutes, I would say. We start at 10:05. Thank you.